They're obviously not interested in what the rewards are, and they obviously don't feel the sanctions are strong enough or have any impact on them. I had a class of Year 6 boys who, well, there was some girls as well, obviously, but the boys were very, they'd just had SATs, and they'd had enough of revising and sitting still, really.
Those points don't mean anything.
They means nothing. No, they weren't interested in points or anything, but what they were interested in was going and playing football at break. So the minute you started to clock minutes off their break time, then they started to, toe the line. So I would just literally have a tally chart on the board, and they'd be warned once, and then if they continued, then they just got a line tallied up, and then I'd sit there at break with my stop clock. Yeah. And sometimes it was for the whole of morning break and sometimes afternoon break. But by the end, and again, because you go on placements, you don't see, it works while you're there, doesn't it? Does it continue working? You don't know. But by the end of my placement, these boys were having breaks, both in the morning and the afternoon. So that was quite good.
I've done that before, mostly with individual children, because it's not generally the whole class, but if it is, you can use it as well. And you have the bubble on the board, and you clock a minute off. But also what I found works is if they start behaving and showing that they're behaving, to rub one off, and then they can earn them back, and they realise that it's not just doom and gloom.
You're nice and
I've used the stopwatch approach as well, and it was more based on the whole class staying in at break time. But I found out they were quite happy to stay in at break time. It was dinner time that affected them. They didn't want to stay in at dinner time. So I had to adapt that. But as soon as I started doing that, like looking for the stopwatch. And a few of them would see it and they'd start going, she's doing it. Yeah. And they all start doing it. And it was like Chinese whispers. So it got to the point where I didn't actually have to get it out very many times. But as soon as I did, I just held it up in the air so they could all see. And I wouldn't say a word. And they'd respond to that, and the whole class would go silent. And I actually got it down that they would go silent within sort of like 30-40 seconds of me holding the stopwatch, and they were really good. But then I noticed they're getting a bit bored of this strategy. So for a whole day, I didn't use it, and I waited for them to notice, because they were still being noisy. And it wasn't until right to the end of this day, this lad said to me, "Miss, we must have been really good today because you've not used the stopwatch once." And I said, "You know what? You were very good, but I did notice that you were a little bit noisy at times. So, and you know what the stopwatch is all about now. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start tomorrow, and any time I clock up, I'm going to double it." And the whole class was like, the next day, I think I used it once the whole day.
When you use it though, was it the whole class that was noisy? Because that is something that I do resent a lot. And I remember when I was at school, and it was always the whole class was in, and I did resent my teachers for that, because it wasn't me.
It wasn't you doing it.
Where I found it really effective actually was with a couple of joker children in the class who really loved to make everybody else laugh, especially when you're waiting for quiet for anything. And those children, those two children didn't care very much for missing their break time or their lunch time, but clocking up for the whole class, and I was a bit harsh, I didn't go for whole minutes, I would give them 20 seconds.
And I'd add it up on the board.
And they really cared about 20 seconds, it mattered to them. But the rest of the class stopped laughing at those children very, very quickly. And they were, like you say, "Oh, she's doing it,
It didn't take long. It didn't take long at all. And I understand, but you very quickly see the ones who are causing the trouble, and the whole class then reacts against that, don't they? And they all actually start working as a team.
Sometimes it's better for the peers to tell the rest.
You're taking the power away from those children who are disrupting it for everyone.
When I was in a Year 5 class, it was very boy-heavy class, and there was a lot of disruption, and so everywhere you moved them, they'd always be with someone, and we had the sanctions like on the board where if you you'd have your name, you'd have a warning, then your name, then if you start getting marks, and you'd lose minutes of break. And they did it like a competition, as if like who could get the most. So I thought, right, we'll focus on rewards rather than and just the smallest, like really good behaviour out of these. I had raffle tickets, and I'd give them a raffle ticket for good behaviour, good work, and then at the end of the week we'd do a raffle draw, and whoever's name was pulled out, they could choose their own prize from a box. And I've done it with Year 3s and Year 5s, and they've all, like, as long as there's things in there that, like, I had notebooks, SpongeBob Square pens, things like that, and they could choose their own prize. And it's also really nice as well if it's one of those kids that is often misbehaving, whose name gets drawn out, because they think, oh yeah, like, and they all were trying to get, and they were counting up, oh, I've got this many raffle tickets today, kind of thing. And it was good to focus on the rewards rather than the sanctions.
What's expected in the classroom does work to a certain extent, but I found that sometimes it can help to do something really random, really off the cuff that they're not used to, because they've got to think, well, what? For example, there was a situation, I had a couple of children that were just persistently bad throughout one lesson, and normally they were quite good. And all I needed to do was, whilst I was talking, turn around, write their name on the board. That's all I did. And then that was it. There was a lid on them for another 10-15 minutes before they even made another murmur, because they were so unsure about why their name was on the board. And even a few of the children said, so you could see looking at them as if to say, well, what's going to happen to them? Are they going to be transported to another country or what? I don't know. Yeah, but
how long did that last for? That mystery element of not knowing what's going to happen.
Well, at the end of the lesson, all I did was say, right, I wrote your names down. You're lucky because you were so well behaved for the rest of the lesson that there wasn't any consequence. But going back to what you were saying about the peer thing, quite often the behaviour is just because they want the attention of their peers in a negative way in terms of the lesson. So if you turn it back on them by saying, well, because of your behaviour the whole class was staying, they don't have that attention anymore from all their friends. So that all of a sudden their friends are like, you know, stop talking, and then you'll actually find that the peer influence is actually a lot stronger than yours.
Absolutely. You can do that on tables, can't you, when you're getting ready for lunch and say, well, this table's fantastic, this table's not so good anymore.
Coming into the lesson as well, you know, if there's a group of children that are sitting down and they're reading or whatever I mean, in the school I was working in, the thing was, you know, you're coming after lunch, you're reading quietly while the register's being taken. And I'll just use the proximity phrase, you know, oh, well done, orange table, you're nice to see you, you'll be going home, you'll be having your break on time or whatever, you know, you sort of back it up with some positive, and then the rest of the class will quickly follow, you know. So
with the positive praise as well, when a child's doing something distracting, I've often gone in, instead of saying don't do that, I'd say thank you for putting that down, or thank you for not doing that, because you're thanking them with the expectation that they're going to stop. And I've got to say, generally they do stop if you put the words thank you.
Thank you works better than please, doesn't it?
It does, or don't. It just says thank you.
Lots of people have said that.
that.
Angela said that about always, and I've never thought of. It's quite a conscious thing to turn your language around that.